How you doing? You're looking absolutely amazing on this Thursday. That's it, baby. It's Thursday. Thirsty Thursday. I'm going to get straight into the meat and potatoes as we have got a little bit to get through. And I know that you guys have got better things to do than listen to me. But in this video, what we're going to be looking at is an article from the Palestine, however you want to say it. I'll say it however I want. Chronicles, and they're talking about Charlie Kirk's relationship with Israel and what was actually happening. And look, some of you will know this all too well. Some of you will know this won't be new news to you, but some of you it will. But it will give you an insight into what was actually happening in Charlie Kirk's decline with respect of the support of where he stood from a political standpoint with regards to Israel, Palestine and all that jazz. And it is going to confirm that Charlie Kirk had potentially even stated, look, if I don't fall in line, they will kill me. Strap yourselves in, because this comes in the midst of, we're seeing a lot of social media content. Later on today, I'm going to be speaking about the decline of Turning Point USA, because they seem to be on their ass. Charlie Kirk was the magna, I'm afraid, and he's no longer there, and it's showing that it's going to hurt them bad. So check out video 2 later. But in this, we're seeing a lot of stuff around the Charlie Kirk shooting. We're seeing a resurgence in potential proof that Charlie Kirk was in fact shot from not the front and from somewhere else, and there is some real credible videos floating about. I've been sent some footage that sadly I just can't show on this platform, because it will get taken down, or I will get taken down. But it's very, very graphic. It's very, very slow. It runs frame by frame, and it does raise your eyebrows as to what potentially happened. And we're also seeing more and more crisis actors seemingly around this campus on the day this happened. We've already looked at George Zinn, obviously, and his behaviour, the strange police officer, whether he was a police officer, I don't know whether he'd got his police uniform from a Kellogg's cornflakes packet, but he very quickly wanted to remove his badge when the camera was on him. And we're seeing some odd shit. We're also seeing, which I will just show you, we have got this, which is Andrea Burkhart. She's been in contact. She's a lawyer herself, an attorney herself. She's been in contact with Utah County Court. We have a movement of Tyler Robinson. I don't know why that says it is hereby ordered that Jackson Thomas Fox be transported for a preliminary hearing on Friday the 24th, on Friday the 24th of October. Don't know who that guy is. Someone else can probably tell me, but it is Utah versus Tyler Robinson, and it is for a preliminary hearing. And Andrea did also state that this hearing is going to be closed. It says the docket is now showing a closed hearing in Tyler Robinson's case this Friday, October 24th. I have a pretty good idea what this is about, and I'll be discussing it on Substack as well as when we go live on Friday afternoon. I'll keep an eye on that. If you guys want to head over to Andrea Burkhart and watch her live, go and do so. If not, do not worry. I shall watch it, segment it, bring it back to you in a more digestible format. But what are we talking about? We're talking about this here, because it's very important, I think, that some people learn and understand what was going on with Charlie and the Israel situation. I had previously mentioned about this Hamptons trip, which they mention here, look, which is the billionaire Bill Ackman convened a stormy Israel intervention with Charlie Kirk, sources say. Kirk was hammered at Hamptons meeting this August for his growing criticism of Israeli influence. Sources say he left upset and fretted about blackmail, which we did briefly hear him talk about on Megyn Kelly's show in the aftermath of that meeting. And yeah, he weren't happy. But look, this is what we want to look at. Look, for the sake of this article, we will look at Charlie Kirk and his connections to Israel, including his views, and judge the merit of claims about Israeli involvement in the assassination. To begin with, the Charlie Kirk story began, or was at least mainstream, through the support of a far-right Zionist named David Horowitz. After the death of Horowitz on April 29th this year, Kirk commented the following on X, formerly Twitter. Without David Horowitz, I'm not sure Turning Point USA would exist. Over 90% of our earliest major donors were introduced at a David Horowitz event. Thanks to his warm endorsements and generous introductions, his support opened doors that would have otherwise remained closed. Far-right campaigner David Horowitz founded the David Horowitz Freedom Center, the DHFC, in 1998, using the strategies that would later be used far more successfully by the likes of Kirk, Ben Shapiro, and others, taking to college campuses to attack leftists and Muslims as existential threats to the West. And look, I just want to say this before we go. Just because I'm reading this, it doesn't mean that I share every single thought and ideology behind it. I think it's just important to listen, especially as we move through, about what was actually happening. So the DHFC and affiliated extremist Zionist billionaires came to represent a sprawling, interconnected network of lobby groups, think tanks, tech billionaires, and prominent media officials. Pretty much every major right-wing influencer that we have all come to know today either had their careers kick-started, funded, or were aided in some way by this network. Included as part of this network were even the likes of Candace Owens, who had a public fallen out with Horowitz amidst her sudden shift in coverage of Israel. Owens had in fact previously admitted that I started my political career, on YouTube making just funny, satirical videos, and I got an email from David Horowitz inviting me to this conference, and let me just tell you what a big deal it was for me. I had no connections whatsoever. Horowitz himself was responsible for paving the way towards the right-wing ecosystem that exists online and in the conservative corporate media today, pushing anti-left, anti-Islam and anti-black talking points in a way carefully designed to present a clash of civilian-style narrative to the benefit of Israel. In fact, you can almost copy and paste the arguments made by David Horowitz on college campuses during the early 2000s, and they are nearly indistinguishable from the messaging of a Charlie Kirk or Ben Shapiro. Why mention this connection? Because it is crucial to understand who was behind the rise of Charlie Kirk and Turning Point USA. These donors and foundations poured large amounts of money into fostering the right-wing messaging we see featuring centre stage in the ongoing Western culture war. While major conservative voices who were long staunch supporters of Israel had never deviated from their unquestioning support for Zionism, many prominent figures within the right-wing movement began jumping ship after October 7th, 2023, when Israel initiated its genocide in Gaza. Charlie Kirk, however, being perhaps the most influential conservative influencer through his reach amongst younger Americans, remained a staunch supporter of Israel, which we know this is the case because he still gets a lot of backlash for this specific reason. Kirk stated publicly that Palestine and Palestinians don't exist, asserting that it's called Judea and Samaria. It's not called Palestine. He also visited Israel and its illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank, including a trip to Al-Khalil, where he raised an Israeli flag in front of the Ibrahimi Mosque, which has been partially turned into a synagogue and is the second most important holy site to Muslims in Palestine. Kirk openly advocated a pro-Israeli position and used discriminatory language against Palestinians, even denying their very existence, working to try and justify massacre after massacre, once claiming that the Palestinians brought the situation on themselves. And this is where we get the switch now, which could have potentially been why what happened to Charlie could have happened to him. So did he suddenly change his position, yes or no? One clip that is being presented as proof of Kirk's shift in views was an exchange he had on the PBD podcast about October 7th, where he insinuated that a stand-down order may have been given by the Israeli leadership that day, further fueling theories that the Hamas-led attack was an inside job or allowed to happen. What many didn't pick up on is that these comments were made in the aftermath of the attack way back in October 2023, not recently. Although he did reaffirm those beliefs later on, therefore his words back then clearly do not represent evidence that he was in some way changing his views on Israel or Zionism. It is true, however, that he did begin to lightly question Israeli influence over US politics and whether the conservative movement should be putting Israel ahead of the United States on its list of priorities. In fact, the signs of this alleged evolution in Charlie Kirk's views appear to have began in July this year, when he decided to host Tucker Carlson and comic Dave Smith at the TPUSA summit in Tampa, Florida. Carlson, Smith, and even prominent conservative commentator Megyn Kelly all used the platform to voice opinions critical of Israel, a message which appeared to resonate strongly with the young conservatives in attendance. Immediately following this TPSA summit, Kirk came under immediate fire, publicly, by many of his traditional pro-Israeli allies. As head of TPUSA, the decision he made to platform popular conservative voices critical of Israel was deemed unacceptable and anti-Semitic. A column was even taken out in the Times of Israel, which accused him of allowing the spread of anti-Semitism and argued to him that he get back in line with his previous stances. Other popular Zionist voices such as Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro and Laura Loomer had all piled on Kirk, with Loomer claiming he was no longer anything more than a grifter, attempting to excommunicate him from the pro-Trump MAGA movement. Kirk would later go on Megyn Kelly's show, where he expressed his frustration with the intense backlash, which is what I referenced and I've shown that interview previously, against his decision to host critics of Israel and TPUSA. I have less ability sometimes online to criticise the Israeli government about backlash than actual Israelis do, and that's really, really weird. It must be noted, however, that despite Kirk's publicly voiced frustrations and open questioning of Israeli policies, including entertaining the idea that Jeffrey Epstein had ties to the Mossad, and let's not forget that Charlie Kirk, again back 2 months before his death in Florida, very, very clearly stating that he was pushing for all this to come out. He wanted this to come out. Privately, publicly, he wanted it done. Have we heard anything since? Have we fuckers like? Will we? Will we fuckers like? I wait to be proven wrong. He still remained a staunch supporter of Israel. His justification for his stance is that he didn't want Islamo-fascists to seize occupied Jerusalem. His last interview prior to the assassination was conducted with Ben Shapiro, where he began to ask questions about the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians. Although from his post on X, it is also clear that he was still discussing Muslims and Islam as primary threats to the West, which is congruent with his overarching pro-Israeli narrative. This narrative is the same one that David Horowitz advocated, claiming that Israel was part of Western civilization's defense against the left, Islam and Muslims. While former Israeli administrations had attempted to capture supporters from both the left and the right, this current leadership appears to have given up on seeking centrists, liberals and leftists. Instead, they are doubling down on their racist, ethno-nationalist messaging. While Charlie Kirk undoubtedly appeared to be listening to the concerns of his younger conservative audience, a population that is overwhelmingly opposed to Israel, he never took the step toward adopting a fully critical view. Instead, he platformed critics of Israel, played the devil's advocate in interviews with staunch Zionists, and entertained points critical of the Israeli government, which, in my opinion is indicative of someone who wanted to show that he was leaning that way but didn't quite have the balls to do it himself. It's like getting someone else to say what you want to say and being a little bit smart about it. But it says evidence of Israel's involvement in assassination. Almost immediately after the assassination, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu took to both social media and broadcast media to claim that Charlie Kirk was a fierce defender and ally of Israel. Yet there's rather blatant capitalizing on the death of the American conservative only raised suspicions that had quickly gone viral online, claiming an Israeli connection to the assassination. In fact, Benjamin Netanyahu was even asked during an interview on Newsmax whether Israel had any role in the Kirk assassination. Initially, the origin of the claim appeared to be linked back to a tweet by well-known conservative commentator Harrison H. Smith back in August, which read, "I'm not going to name names, but I was told by someone close to Charlie Kirk that Charlie thinks Israel will kill him if he turns against them." This alone did not provide any credible basis for such an argument to be made. Additionally, the stances of Kirk could indeed indicate that he was undergoing some kind of realignment with his younger base of Republicans, but was far from concrete proof that he was turning against Israel. I personally feel that they're wrong here. Then came a bombshell report published by the Grey Zone in which they cited a source close to Kirk stating that Kirk had been receiving countless text messages and phone calls from the Israeli Prime Minister's wealthy allies in the US, including many who had funded TPUSA. The report noted that Kirk was ordered back into line by Zionist donors and was frightened. This report from the Grey Zone also appears to align with the account that Kirk himself had offered about the massive backlash he had received following his deviations from his otherwise staunchly pro-Israel narrative. It has also been reported that Benjamin Netanyahu had offered to organise an influx of Zionist funding for TPUSA. This will be what we've spoken about previously, that large sum of money, $150 million was it? But that offer was rejected by Charlie Kirk, and he even received an invitation to take another trip to occupied Palestine on an Israeli-sponsored trip. TPUSA has over 3,500 chapters across the US, making it by far the most influential conservative group among young Americans. It's also important to consider that Israel has identified that it has lost much of its support in the United States and even dedicated a new budget to winning over young conservatives. So they were focusing very hard on the very crowd that Charlie Kirk was their predominant message board. To this effect, the Israeli government organised a tour for 16 MAGA and pro-Trump influencers with the goal of securing their support. Israel Foreign Ministry funded the tour and said that it aims to bring around 550 such influencers on similar tours by the end of 2025. The group tasked with organising these trips is called Israel 365. Which states that its goal is to defend Western civilization against threats from both progressive left extremism and global jihad. All of this is to say that if it were true, Kirk was beginning to undergo a shift in his attitudes towards Israel, there is an argument for an Israeli motive to kill. Israel has carried out assassinations in Western countries before, including in Malta and Italy, although against Palestinians. This, however, would be unprecedented, and as of now there is simply no evidence for it. Motive does not serve as proof for this theory, and we still do not have the precise wording of the alleged threats from wealthy Zionist donors to discern what kind of messages were communicated to Kirk prior to his death. But we do have Charlie Kirk's response to the messages that he was getting, and we've got that on screen by himself, and he wasn't fucking very happy. You could clearly see that things weren't good. Further fueling these theories of Israeli involvement in the assassination has been the constant stream of disinformation surrounding the shooting. Countless claims concerning the accused shooter, a man who has been widely accused of behaving as a decoy and who was arrested by law enforcement at the event, including the strange occurrences nearby, such as the flight of a private jet that briefly turned off its tracking devices. These have all raised suspicions further. The inconsistence of Israeli influencers and politicians that Kirk was so incredibly close to Israel has been interpreted broadly as bad faith, attempts to capitalise on his murder, yet as of now there is simply no evidence beyond a possible motive to support the theory that Israel was behind the assassination. So we do have a potential motive, and we have previous assassinations that they've been behind. Now, this isn't about pushing and saying that anybody did it, but all I can, without a doubt now, say is that I feel that the narrative that we're being told is not true. I do feel that it's not true. I feel that Kash Patel is hiding something. They're supposedly been doing all these investigations of multiple people in the background, but there hasn't been one single further arrest whatsoever. Nothing at all. So they're going to hide behind, well, we can't arrest if there isn't enough evidence, even though we had seen things online that would suggest that people were talking about it. People were talking about it. It was widely known. Now, could have that been used as an in? There was a bunch of people that wanted to kill Charlie, and someone else saw an opportunity to leverage that situation. Who knows? But powerful people, money, things can happen, and they can happen quickly. And we do have video footage and stuff that I've seen that does lean heavily into Charlie Kirk being shot from another position, and it having credible support of it, even though initially I had completely written that off. I don't think even I can completely write that off, because if we're going to say that things are being hidden to the extent that we are, then it would be ludicrous of me to sit here and say that they couldn't hide an entry wound. That would just be stupid. Let me know down below what you think, and I will catch you all later today. Love you all. Mwah.